Chapter 14, Train Up a Child. Waninyekavu returned home after 3 weeks and was met with open arms. "How was your vacation?" said Obe. Waninyekavu thought about it. "I never considered it a vacation, but I guess it was. It was beautiful, and look. We brought back souvenirs." Pointing to fireball and ice hyenas. Jome smiled. Jayla just smiled. "What?" The following year, the puppies grew and started having pups. They moved them to a section where they could feed off the land where no one wanted to live. Rattlesnakes, Gila monsters, prairie dogs, coyotes, javelinas, jaguars, bighorn sheep, and jackrabbits were plentiful for them. Jayla and Anaya trained their hyenas in their martial art forms and slowly created a battalion of their own, composed of men, women, and children, who had gifts accordingly. Waninyekavu's work around the house and his duty as a council member and commander-in-chief put great demands on him. Spending time with Queen seemed impossible, so he instructed the eldest children to teach his youngest so he could spend time with Queen. Jayla and Anya were happy with the idea and began as soon as possible. At the same time, Waninyekavu enjoyed Queen because she, too, was frustrated with the idea of them not seeing each other. They both started acting like high school sweethearts, and the entire town saw it. Waninyekavu wrote poetry of love to her, lock and key. "You and me, you hold the lock, I have the key. You and me, lock and key. I hope to think I can unlock your heart. And you have the key to my destiny. You and me, lock and key. I thought I knew love before, but for some reason, I think you are here to open that door. You and me, lock and key. Everything I ever wanted, I would settle for a few missing pieces. You have it all. Now, I don't want to settle for less, like I did the rest. You and me, lock and key." He wrote, "My Queen." Insight into a brief history. In the days of old, let the truth be told. How the men treated their women, especially from the times of Sodom and Gomorrah, up until the Roman era. Women, a lot, were afraid to look upon a mirror. Reason: men fell in love with men. No, they didn't care for them. Women were only used to bear children, cook, clean, no power, no words they formed were of any good. Never heard. Yes, that was the norm back then. Men. They were looking for the touch of another man. This sickens my soul, let the truth be told. Until the Isles of Lesbo were formed, women fell in love with other women, a perverted state for the human race. Now, many ask me, why do you cry? Trying to defend the state of these women. I reply, with one last tear in my eye. I'm only half a being. In order to be whole, I need someone to comfort my soul, a woman. A woman is the only thing for me to be complete, truly made whole. Growing up, I met lust and love. Love was the one for me. Can't you see? We, as men, have bitten the hand of the one that is dear to us. Why argue, fuss and fight? Now, all we go through is pure hell. 'Cause of the men in their past, did the same. Blame all, because of one. I can't do anything with another man. That will not comfort my soul. No man can make me whole. The touch of a woman is all I need. My heart bleed for that need. Homosexuality is rampant. Yes, heavy on the scene. That's for them, not for me. All I need is my Queen." He wrote, single-parent household. I was told before I got old that there are 4 types of women. First, and on top, a woman. Then there's a lady. You have your bitches. And lastly, them hoes. We would lose more than half these hoes if we get rid of single-parent households. Let me explain before you put dirt on my name. There's a lot of things you just won't understand living in a single-parent household. Single parent is a single-sided coin. Somebody lying. Many are dying. Who to believe? Or do we automatically believe? That person you see on a daily basis. Tell you his faults, but won't confess to their deceit, their betrayal. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes the truth comes out later, and makes you blue. Betrayed by the liar, betrayed by mama. Her words you thought were true, to you. So, you hate that man. Your father. But he did the best he could and the only things he can. She wanted more and became the whore. Why? I cry. Why? Because I can. This story might only be for black folks, living in this land. This is not all, but it's for more than a few. Who do what they do. Let me get back to the classifications, at hand. Just found out, many women like to classify themselves, just as bitches. And the foe, ain't no mo. They say it's only one. That can't be no fun. Here's my definition of a woman. Understanding the situation and act accordingly. No nagging. No complaining, get the job done, because it affects the family. It affects you and me. Our family. Then there's a lady. She's young. Single. And looking for a perfect candidate. She's feminine, friendly, but be aware of the bitches. A bitch, a snitch, this motherfucker got more strength, and got control over all the men. She knows the game and she's playing chess to our checkers. So, I'll say no mo. And lastly, the hoe. Simple. Anything goes. This shit comes from my soul. This shit called single-parent household. Look at it, it's listed on your taxes. Another write-offs for shit we be doing. Murder, rape, carjacking. Looking at my kind. My people. I'll say this a few more times and you will never hear it again in my rhythms. In my rhymes. Those of us who lived in a two-parent household and those of us who lived in a single-parent household can't. Won't understand. If the single parent is a mother, it depends on the outcome. Is she a hard worker? But who's raising the kids? The streets. If she works from home, when will the boys tell his mother, I'm grown and now he's gone? If she's a hoe, he and she's a hoe. Fuck it, I can't say a momo. Not true for everyone, but the number is large. 'Cause I'm one. Then you got the ones, and this could be fun. Who's a gangster at heart and that nigga gone? Like a rap song. But y'all not masculine? Different variations, of different situations, but then they're the two-parent household. Less chaos. Didn't say none. I said less. There's some kind of structure. Morals, and a way to act. A united front is amongst us. Don't get me wrong. There's hoes in that fold. Let me end. More positive and understanding come from a two-parent household. And it's sanctioned by God. So, you know you will go far. But chaos and uncertainty come out of a single-parent household. You've been told. Forewarned. It has been shown. Look around and see how we living, how we dying. Chaos unfolds. In a single-parent household. He wrote, your soul speaks as mine. It's amazing. How can two think the same? Even call on his holy name. Morals and understanding are even the same. Both write about our feelings like David and his wife Sheba. The right and wrongs we have done. You know life teaches you, but a few catches life's clues. Of what you can and can't do. Wisdom doesn't always come with age. It comes with trials and tribulations. Not everyone knows the same. But with you we feel the same, about God. I hope me and you can be as one. You are so wonderful to me. I hope you can always be mine. There are things I know, I need to do. Maybe there are some things you need to do too, before we can join to be as one. This is not a joke, not a game, or even a lie. I once was lost, but now I've been found. You are definitely one of a kind. And I feel that your soul, speaks as mine. He wrote the reasons. You have a heart of gold. You are bold. You speak your mind and still kind. Supportive, considerate. Show appreciation. A loving mother. This is what I noticed, not something I was told. Down to earth and cool. No man can ask for much more. It makes my heart soar, throughout all 4 seasons. You asked, why do I love you so much? Here, baby. Here are the reasons. He wrote, between your thighs. When you look into each other's eyes, and you kiss the one you miss. Emotions flows, emotions go. But wait. No one kisses anymore, why? They just want to get between the thighs, and still don't look into each other's eyes. I cry. There's no surprise, what we all have between our thighs. It's a work of art, invented by God, for God. Not to hurt and do dirt. Many of us. We act as if it's a sin to love. Be in love, make love. Share our love. True. There are some who abuse the word love. I myself can't abuse it, can't misuse it. But in the long run, they were hurt by love, but their love just might have been lust. Why? For their selfish needs. I guess they were confused about the meaning of the word they could have found, was nothing more than lust. It's just the opposite of love, believe me, there is a difference. Listen. To take someone's heart, just to get between the thighs. To make money, to give, or to get money, just to get between the thighs. To deceive in order to receive, the precious jewels. The precious gift between the thighs. Male or female. It's wrong. That's why you sing that song, you sing. Knowing many don't believe in love anymore, and lust has taken over. Many die, between the thighs, by a disease sent from on high. I can hear many of you now saying, he's just a fool, think he's cool, writing this mess, with his mind in the gutter. You're wrong, art is just that. Art and love is just that. Love. It's how you perceive that particular piece of artwork. What is lovely to others, is trash to another. The same token is taken between the thighs. Question. What if there was nothing between the thighs? What would be your course of action? Reaction to one another. I'll wait for your reply. And he also wrote, African Queen. Moonlit eyes. German chocolate skin. Lips of an African queen. This is no lie. Your beauty just might be a sin. Better yet, the most perfect thing I've ever seen. Yes, the perfect blend. Hard, but gentle. Mean, but kind. How I feel so comfortable when you're on my mind. So relaxing, so smooth, like a raindrop falling on the morning dew. Yes, this is you. Beautiful, beautiful, oh, so beautiful to me. To my African queen, of my dreams. Jayla was excited to teach her siblings because she loved history like her father, and Anaya loved the arts. They both taught their siblings until they discovered what they loved, and, like a domino effect, Wanyanyekavu and Queen's children became very popular for their wisdom as well. Anaya was convinced that there wasn't any such thing as music genres and taught about some greats. Like Miles Davis, Grover Washington Jr., and Chester Arthur Burnett, better known by his stage name Howlin' Wolf. She even taught about some of the amazing athletes she admired. Joe Gans became the greatest lightweight boxer of all time back in 1902 when he defeated the former world welterweight champion, Eddie Connolly. He also was the first African American world title holder in any sport. As a Wakatilian champion reigning during the Jim Crow era, he endured physical assaults, a stolen title, bankruptcy, and many attempts to destroy his reputation. Then there was a Wakatilian named Major Taylor, a young Wakatilian man who wanted to compete in cycling, the nation's most popular sport that was mostly played and dominated by white men. But Mr. Taylor became the fastest man in the world during his time. 12 years before boxer Jack Johnson and 50 years before baseball player Jackie Robinson, Taylor faced racism at nearly every turn, especially by whites who feared he would disprove their stereotypes of Wakatilians. J-Lo was passionate, and some would say dramatic, when she taught, 22 years before the brutal murder of 14-year-old Emmett Till, who was brutally killed in the same way in Princess and Maryland. J-Lo asked as she looked at her brothers and sisters. Anaya raised her hands. Not you, Anaya. She waited a few seconds. Anyone? Frustrated, she said. Get out your pads, now. Everyone pulled out their pads as J-Lo looked on. This doesn't make any sense. George Armwood, a 23-year-old Wakatilian, was dragged from a cell, stabbed, and then lynched on a tree before some 2,000 white folks. Afterward, he was brought down, burnt, and his charred body was dragged through the town with his body parts thrown towards the quarters of the Wakatilians. For what? He, making gestures with her hands as she continued, allegedly, assaulted a 71-year-old white woman named Mary Denston, whose son was a policeman. Mrs. Denston said she was walking down the road when Armwood assaulted her. He was then taken to Salisbury Jail, miles away from Princess Anne, to avoid mob justice because there had been a lynching 2 years before of another Wakatilian named Matthew Williams. The locals pressured Somerset County Judge Robert F. Dewar and State Attorney John Robbins to return Armwood. Eventually, the governor, Albert Ritchie, stepped in, and they returned Armwood to Somerset County, placed on the jail's second floor with all the other Wakatilian prisoners. A crowd quickly assembled with battering rams and breached the jailhouse doors. An 18-year-old boy immediately cut off his ear with a butcher knife. The growing mob beat Armwood nearly to death, dragged him to a tree, and hanged him. Afterward, the mob cut down his corpse, dragged it through the streets, hanged it again, and staged a public burning. One white man said, and I quote, "It would have cost the state $1,000 to hang the man. It cost us 75 cents. This sparked a national outcry and called for the prosecution of the culprits, yet investigations at the county, state, and federal levels faced obstacles and delays. When presented with identifying evidence, the county prosecutor refused to act. After the Maryland Attorney General ordered the arrest of 8 people, white residents who supported the alleged killers provoked protest riots. An all-white jury ultimately found them not guilty. For Wakatilians, this period had been both a period of greatness and doom. World War I, II, and the Civil War were behind us. But one particular event happened during this time, but it took 100 years after the event for anyone to hear about what happened. In the summer of 1919, hundreds of Wakatilian were burned alive, shot, lynched, and beaten to death by white mobs. Thousands saw their homes and businesses burned to the ground and were driven out, many never to return. It was called Red Summer because of the bloodshed and amounted to some of the worst white-on-black violence in U.S. history. Beyond the lives and family fortunes lost, it had far-reaching repercussions, contributing to generations of black distrust of white authority. It prompted blacks to defend themselves and their neighborhoods with fists and guns. Revitalized civil rights organizations like the NAACP inspired black journalists to do courageous reporting and influenced subsequent leaders who would fight for racial equality. Sage Matthew, a history professor, once said, "The people who were the icons of the civil rights movement were raised by the people who survived Red Summer, for history books ignore it." Most museums didn't acknowledge it, for it contradicted the post-World War I-era notion that America was making the world safe for democracy. Over 250 blacks were killed, and at least 25 riots by white mobs that never faced punishment within 10 months. Historian John Hope Franklin called it the greatest period of interracial strife the nation has ever witnessed. Many say the Wakatilian who were returning from World War I started it all, for they were expecting the same rights they had fought for and bled for in Europe. Wakatilians were moving north to escape the brutal Jim Crow laws of the South, but whites saw them as competition for jobs, homes, and political power. Ethnic cleansing was the goal of the white rioters, said William Tuttle, a retired professor of American Studies and author of Race Riot, Chicago in the Red Summer of 1919. He said, and I quote, "They wanted to kill as many black people as possible and to terrorize the rest until they were willing to leave and live someplace else." The violence didn't start nor did it end in 1919. Some count Red Summer's era as beginning with the deaths of over 24 Wakatilians in East St. Louis, Missouri, in 1917 and extending through the Rosewood Massacre. At least 1,122 Americans were killed in racial violence over those 6 years. In 1919 alone, violence erupted in places like New York, Memphis, Tennessee, and Philadelphia, just to name a few. In Washington, D.C., a white mob, primarily war veterans, rampaged over the weekend of July 19th to 22nd, beating any Wakatilian they could find after false rumors of a white woman being assaulted by black men spread. The rioters beat a Wakatilian with clubs and stones wrapped in handkerchiefs lying in the street for over 20 minutes before being taken to the hospital. Sensing the failure of the police, the mob became even more contemptuous of authority, and 2 more Wakatilians were attacked and beaten directly in front of the White House. Carter G. Woodson, the historian who founded Black History Month in 1926, saw the violence up close. Poor Wakatilian sharecroppers in Elaine, Arkansas, were beaten and killed after they dared to join a labor union. Wakatilian journalist Ida B. Wells noted that they dragged Lula Black from her farm after saying she would join the union. They knocked her down, beat her over the head with their pistols, kicked her, almost killed her, then took her to jail. Wells wrote in her report, "The Arkansas Race Riot." The same mob went to Frank Hall's house and killed Frances Hall, a crazy old woman housekeeper, tied her clothes over her head, and threw her body in the road where it lay exposed till the soldiers came and took it up. Wakatilian journalists like Wells played an essential role in getting these stories out. Kevin Strait, a curator at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, wrote, "Black newspapers like the Chicago Defender helped to provide an alternative voice that represented why African Americans deserved to be here, deserved equal rights, and was sometimes justified in fighting." Red Summer marked a new era of black resistance to white injustice, with African Americans standing up in unprecedented numbers and killing some of their tormentors. Again, the returning Wakatilian soldiers from World War I led the charge, using skills they refined in Europe. "The Germans weren't the enemy was right here at home," said Harry Haywood in his autobiography, A Black Communist in the Freedom Struggle, The Life of Harry Haywood. In Washington, Carrie Johnson, 17, became a hero for shooting at white invaders in her neighborhood. She fatally shot a white policeman who broke into her second-story bedroom. She claimed self-defense, and her manslaughter conviction was overturned. The NAACP gained about 100,000 members that year. Soon, Wakatilians were going to Congress pressing congressional representatives and senators to pass anti-lynching legislation. They fought back in the courts, filing lawsuits when people were being mistreated or railroaded. The lessons of Red Summer would be relived all over again after World War II. Many of them were alive or had heard the stories of what happened in 1919, and they said, "Never again." Jayla got mad at Abuxigan for he didn't seem interested in anything she said as he stared into space. She shouted, "Little boy, tell me something you have learned with your nappy-headed self. You got your head up in space, and I'm trying to teach you something." 8-year-old Abuxigan stood up. "James Wormley Jones," Jayla said. "What about him?" Abuxigan bucked his eyes and shook his head. "Hello, the first black special agent for the FBI in 1919. He was a cop in Washington, D.C. But he left to join the army during World War I, where he was trained as an officer and assigned as the captain of Company F of the 368th Infantry, 92nd Division with his brother. Company F of the 368th Infantry, 92nd Division, was one of many segregated Wakatilian forces in the army. They were sent to Europe and fought in France, near the Belgium and German borders. After the war ended, Jones returned to Washington, D.C. and was promoted as an FBI special agent assigned to the General Intelligence Division, created in response to terrorist bombings. No one knew anything about him, not even other Wakatilian FBI agents, until 100 years later, in 2019. Hundreds of Wakatilian special agents have followed in his footsteps, including the first female Wakatilian, Sylvia Mathis, who joined the special agent ranks in 1976. In February 2019, the FBI honored Jones and the countless others that followed him in their pursuit to serve the American people as FBI special agents. The agency launched a year-long initiative to commemorate the 100-year history of Wakatilian special agent service to the FBI and the United States through a coordinated campaign called Our History, Our Service. Abuxagan paused. How about Olaudah Equiano, also known as Gustavus Vassa, who was an African in London, a freed slave, who supported the British movement to end the slave trade? Jayla stopped him. You proved your point, you may sit down. Abuxagan shook his head. No, you are always talking about I don't listen. The word nigger actually began as a sacred word in Africa, picked up by the Portuguese during the beginning of the slave trade on the banks of the sacred river, Niger. They couldn't pronounce the word in their native tongue, so they corrupted it. Niger Ra, from which we get the word nigger, which means black light of God, and Nigel, a common British name, means black God, because black humans were believed to be the epitome of the divine before the slave trade. Because before the 15th century, all images of all gods or God himself were black. All of this is documented. Black, not because of politics but because dark pigment from melanin, the molecule that protects from solar rays and produces dark skin, is vital in a world that lives by the sun. And I'm tired of y'all calling me, lil boy. Anaya said to him, who's the youngest in the family? Abuxagan said, me. Jayla said, are you a girl or a boy? Abuxagan said, a boy. Jayla and Anaya said together, lil boy, as Jayla continued, now, sit down, lil boy. Wanyanyekavu's children grew and enjoyed their particular subjects and taught in schools within the communities. Pilais fell in love with the sciences, Kamuzu enjoyed engineering, Masuda with mathematics, and Shabaka with music like Anaya. Tanesu enjoyed animals like Jayla, Medjay with medical and health, and Abuxagan was nonchalant about everything. He was not interested in any particular subject and just went to school because he was told. Wanyanyekavu was concerned about what his teachers were saying and some of the commits he heard about Abuxagan not being interested in some of his classes. One day, Wanyanyekavu spoke to Abuxagan. Son, why are you not taking part in class and learning what they require of you? Abuxagan had a familiar look, but Wanyanyekavu couldn't place it. Abuxagan said, I learn like a sponge, and after I learn, I store it for later. No need to get excited to learn, for if it's the truth, I don't need to remember it. It will appear when I need it. Wanyanyekavu scratches his head. Okay, like what? Abuxagan said. My mind is blank until you ask me. Wanyanyekavu said, tell me something about African history. Abuxagan, with a straight face, Dr. David Imhotep, who was the first person in the world to hold a PhD in ancient African ancestry. In his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Dr. Imhotep rewrites Orthodox history after examining the scientific and geological evidence. He determined that people of African descent were in America before the Vikings, or the lies about Columbus. He said that all humans originated from the continent of Africa. Historian Ivan van Sertima's book, They Came Before Columbus, examines navigation, shipbuilding, and cultural analogies between Native Americans and Africans. The transportation of plants, animals, and textiles between the continents, and the explorers' diaries, journals, and oral accounts support the claim of an African presence in the New World centuries before Christopher Columbus arrived. In these books, they discuss the launching of the great ships of Mali in 1310 with 200 master boats and 200 supply boats, the sea expedition of the Mandingo king in 1311. Wanyenyekevu smiled, okay, I am convinced. As Wanyenyekevu walked away, he tried to think of who Abuxagan reminded him of. He smiled and said aloud, Yael. Turning to Abuxagan, he said, Do you know of Yael? Abuxagan said, Never heard the name. What did he do? Wanyenyekevu smiled, No, he is not in history per se, he's someone I know but haven't seen in a long time. You remind me of him. While he was talking to Abuxagan, Aldhib called Wanyenyekevu. Wanyenyekevu asked Abuxagan if he wanted to go, and they both took a trip to the Research and Development Center. Aldhib talks to Wanyenyekevu about some problems as Abuxagan walks off and views the systematics. You used pi as 3.14, if you use 39 digits. 3.141592653589793233846. Aldhib said, 3 is enough, but Abuxagan kept talking. 2643383279502888420. Instead of the 3 digits, you will come closer, and the errors lie there. The entire number will fix this problem that a small fractional part means a lot. Then recheck your calculations for the resonance and capacitance. Aldhib looked at Wanyenyekevu. Is he? What? Is the word? Savant or clairvoyant? Or something like that? Wanyenyekevu smiled, he's smarter than the average bear. Aldhib scratched his head, well, I'll try that and see, and believe me, I'll get back to you. You're not the first person who has shocked me. Looking at Wanyenyekevu. 9 years had passed, and the entire territory had tripled, almost quadrupled, in size. Queen had her last child, a boy, Wanyenyekevu, named Ntwadumala. Many people had married and were having children. The two who lived as spies, Jamie and Kenji, who lived in El Paso, Texas, were enlightened, given land, and told to rest in peace for 2 years before being placed in a battalion. Kenji had the gift of self-healing and was placed with Daniel's regiment, and Jamie had the gift of speed and was placed with Grace's regiment. Jamie married a beautiful woman named Enamine, Kenji married Katrinka, Obe married Inesta, she helped raise Takarish, and they had plenty of children. Elisha married Tepkunsit, Elijah married Toma, Naraglisser married Lly, and Grace married a man named Simeon. Mercy married a man by the name of Nixon. Friedrich married a woman of great wisdom like himself, named Akeing, and some years later, Daniel married Nagameo. Wanyenyekevu and his family had incorporated the hyenas as a family emblem. They became part of the infantry and a typical species in the area. All welcomed them as pets and guards, some lived in the wild. Training never ceased, enlightenment flourished, fasting and prayer were a routine as the people lived in peace and harmony. Years passed, and one night as Wanyenyekevu was sleeping, he saw himself in the desert on top of Rincone's mountain to the east. Mletsi appeared to him. Long time, my friend, said Wanyenyekevu. Mletsi smiled, time, I do not know of time. But what is here is beautiful in the eyes of Sabaoth. Wanyenyekevu said, I know, but it's been a long time to me, at least 25 years. Sabaoth has blessed me with a beautiful family. He smiled as he continued, and has also blessed me with Yael's twin, my son, Abuxagan. Mletsi looked at Wanyenyekevu. It is through Abuxagan that Sabaoth will bring his blessings and his promise, but you must send him away, along with Ntwadumala, to Louisiana, for his promise will be fulfilled. 2 will leave, but only 1 will come back. But don't fear. It is the will of Sabaoth to fulfill his promise. Wanyenyekevu turned to look at the view in sadness but turned back around. If it is his will, it will be so. Turning to the skies, he shed a tear as he noticed clouds forming to the west of him. Mletsi said to Wanyinyekevu as he faded away. It is his will, however, the animals you brought back from Africa will never harm those who are enlightened but will tear to pieces those who are not. Your reinforcements from Sabaoth. Send the elders and children home and prepare for war. Wanyinyekevu looked at the skies, saw the clouds getting darker and darker, and said to himself, a storm is coming. He saw what looked like a man walking towards him, a tiny dad at first, but the closer he got to Wanyinyekevu, he grew bigger and taller as the surrounding clouds grew darker, and thunder and lightning grew stronger and louder. A heavily muscular man walks towards him and slowly transforms into a hulk of a man, and his skin peels off, and blood drips and pours as he gets taller, turning into a hideous creature. He hears Mshika's voice saying, John saw it rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. It was like a leopard, with feet like the feet of a bear, and had a mouth like a lion. Wanyinyekevu then awakes out of his sleep. Looking at the time, Wanyinyekevu realized that he had only slept for less than 5 minutes, slightly shaking Queen, baby, it's time. On the stand next to him was a picture of his family that was taken recently. Look at my family, Sabaoth has blessed me, and I don't know what will come of them. Looking up toward the ceiling. Bless them, Lord, as you bless me, forgive them like you forgave me and keep them in your will as you kept me. Taking the picture out of the frame, Jayla and Anaya are now 24 years old, Pilais is now 23 years old, Kamuzu is 22, Masuda and Shabaka are 20, Tanesu is 18, Medjay is 17, Abuksigan is 14 and Twadumala is 10. Wanyinyekevu calls out, my queen, he rubs the picture and repeats it, my queen. Awaken, rubbing her eyes, she hears him call her name. Yes. Wanyinyekevu wipes the tears from his eyes. Baby, it's time. We must send all the elders and those under 15 to my hometown until the war ends. Queen woke up. War. Wanyinyekevu shook his head. I just saw a vision, and Letzi said we have to send the elders to Louisiana, but one of our sons will not return because Sabaoth has a job for him. Whether or not we see him again, he didn't say, and I didn't ask because he must do Sabaoth's will. Wanyinyekevu stood up and got dressed, poured himself a shot of liquor as he walked over to his desk. He took a seat and wrote as the words flowed through different emotions that captivated him. He wrote, Louisiana. Not this shit again. Tossing and turning in my bed, with this junk dancing in my head. This mess that just left, they could have kept. What the hell is going on? Okay, listen. Louisiana. Top capital of the infamous slave trade, the place where music comes from. Yes. Soul, gospel, rhythm and blues, came from us. Why? Hell, the slave trades. The slave trade was from Africa, to the Caribbean, to Louisiana. Then back to Africa. An endless cycle, within a triangle. That is why Louisiana is rich in culture. That's why the French, Native Americans, and modern-day Louisianans has so much in common. After the chaos, we were left with Cajun and Creole down south. And Native Americans up north. Natchez and Choctaws. However, many left the south throughout those 400 years. Since our ass been here in this land, of the so-called, free. Moving up north in various places before, during, and after slavery. Now, the people up north wanna call us slow. Got Big Mama sitting on the couch. She's from the south, she's from Louisiana. But now she's in New York, Detroit, California. Food, don't get me started. Jambalaya, beignet, paboy and much, much, more. Oh, what about gumbo? We're so famous for food, I bet we invented the 2-piece combo. He laughed and thought for a minute, while looking down at his words, he wrote, upset. Upset. Done so much. Again, been so many places. Seen so many faces, don't have much. Thought the wisdom I had wasn't much. Wasn't good enough. The pain received was ignored. Had no value. Foolish thinking. Saying. Why take from those who don't have much? Take from those who have a criminal mind. Started to shine. Before understanding opened my mind. Then I realized. I was depressed. Stressed. Upset. He wrote, the night before. This is a reminder for me to read. So, I won't forget. How I went through a lot of bullshit that was poured onto me trying to reach a goal. Finding out who was friend, who was foe. Right now, I don't think, if I have any more. But when I read this 10, 20, 30 years from now, I will know. Searching, listening, the night before. The word has kept me this far, but it's still hard, feeling like Daniel in the lion's den. Wondering if God has forgiven me for all my sins. The night before. It seems as if people get mad, even sad, to see someone make it to the top. Reach a dream. It seems like they don't believe in hope, but how many do believe in dope? I seen it all, the night before. If they can't see it, they say it's not there. They don't care. But you breathe the air. Is it there? You can't see the oxygen that you breathe, but it's there. You say that's different. I say it's the same. You don't believe in God, but He has opened my heart, my mind, my soul. The night before. All my life, I tried to do the right thing. No, that's a lie. There were times where I did do wrong, many times, I played many games. But I realized that it took hard work, I figured this all out, blessings comes, and sure enough, goes. There are many two-faced people out there, that will try to make you give up hope. The night before. I have seen all this come to life, it ended up in a fight. I was first mad, then I became sad. Ignorance played a big part. But I'm glad the Almighty was in my heart. I woke up the day after, thinking about the night before. Wanyanyekavu put his pen down, staring into space as he sipped on his drink, thinking about the words he wrote. He stood up, finished dressing, and then he reached for his earpiece and shouted, "Emergency meeting, now."